Hello and welcome to another episode of Thick Slices and Deep Cuts. On today's show, I will be ranking the albums of I call it the first 20 years. I think the albums were released over a period of 16 years, but we're going to be reviewing the first 12 albums of legendary heavy metal pioneers, Judas Priest. This is the 99th episode I've done, and it's taken me 99 episodes to finally get to one of the pillars of metal. So historically speaking, I mean, you've got Black Sabbath, and then it's Judas Priest, and then it's Iron Maiden, and then I would say Metallica and Slayer kind of round out like the five pillars of metal. And I think when you look back on the 70s, some people would say, well, Deep Purple, Uriah, Iron Butterfly, some of these bands were metal, sludgy. And I think when you look back on, maybe they were the heavy metal of their day, but I think when you look back on it, the real heavy metal bands, as we see it now, definitely was Black Sabbath for many years, and then around the mid-70s, Judas Priest came and kind of moved things forward even more. They were the first band since Sabbath to move things forward, and then, you got the new wave of British heavy metal, Motorhead, new wave of British heavy metal at the very end of the 70s, and definitely by 1980, with Iron Maiden and all those bands exploding, that's when heavy metal really took off. And as a kid growing up in the 80s and 90s, I just always assumed there were a ton of metal bands because they were always around even when I was like 7 years old or whatever age. But heavy metal was pretty hard to come by until about 1980, and then it seemed to take off a little bit. But also, just of note, this is the second time I'm doing this podcast, so hopefully when you watch this, you'll at least hear some music in the background. But right now I'm recording with no music because I did this episode with music, and it got blocked by YouTube because apparently Sony Music Entertainment owns Judas Priest's music, and so for whatever their reason is, they will block you if you play their music on your podcast, even if you don't want to be monetized. So hopefully, if you hear nothing, that is why, and if you hear anything, it's probably because I was able to put on some music from their first two albums when they were with, I think it was Gull Records. I'm going to try that, and hopefully that'll at least work, but you can't do anything since their first two albums, for sure, and maybe you can't do anything. I don't really know what Sony Music Entertainment owns of theirs and what they don't, but so there you go, just a little bit of there. It's too bad that episode was really good, but I'll try and basically just recreate that. But so we'll get going. I'm just going to review the first part of their career, so basically the first 20 years, up to a point. Once Rob Halford left the band for a period of time, they have done 6 albums since, which I'll touch on at the end, but it's hard to rank those. But the ones they did, the first 12 albums they did from 74 to 1990, were all kind of continuous, and it's easy to review those, that classic era of the band. But I will talk about the more recent 6 albums they've done and everything else. But we'll just get right to it. So I'm going to rank these 12, the first 12 albums. And so coming in at number 12, and by the way, before we rank these, I would say of these 12 I'm going to rank, anything coming in at number 10 to 1 is pretty much essential. I mean, they have a lot of classic albums, and really the only 2 here that I'm going to rank that I wouldn't say are essential are just the bottom 2. But everything else is essential. So, but here we go. Number 12, this would be their 10th album from 1986, Turbo. Probably not a huge surprise here. I think this ranks low on most people's lists of Judas Priest albums. So this comes out in 1986. They're kind of going for that hair metal thing, that glam metal scene, or glam rock, hair metal. So that you've got synthesizer keyboards coming in. The band has a different look. They're primed for MTV at this point. The song Turbo Lover, for me personally, I'm not a huge fan of the song, but it's not a terrible song. Locked In is okay, but there's always like an element of cheese in these songs. But then, here you go, Private Property, Parental Guidance, Rock You All Around the World, Wild Nights, Hot and Crazy Days, Hot for Love. I mean, the bulk of this album is just filled with this, just this hair metal glam rock stuff that it either it's cringeworthy or I laugh out loud when I hear it. I know when I heard Private Property, I was laughing at the chorus. But Out in the Cold, if you can get past the first minute and a half synthesizer thing, which they should have just taken out. But if you can get past that, it's a pretty good song. And the last track, Reckless, is probably my favorite thing on here, and it was supposed to be in the Top Gun soundtrack. For whatever reason, I think Top Gun wanted that song to be exclusive to the soundtrack, and Judas Priest wanted it to also be in the album, so it didn't make it on the Top Gun soundtrack. Too bad, because it could have helped Judas Priest. But Priest are, obviously a metal band, but they're always changing with the times, it seems, especially in the decade of the 80s. And so this was that was them making that move in 86. So while this comes in at 12, I don't think this is a bad album in terms of they ran out of ideas. I think they were intentionally doing an album like this. It's just for somebody like me, I'm not finding much that I like on this album. I mean, again, the title Turbo Lover's okay, Locked In is all right, Out in the Cold is good, and Reckless is pretty good. But everything in the middle of this album is a little cringeworthy, at least for me. So there you go. Coming in at number 12 from 86, Turbo. Okay, coming in at number 11, this was the follow-up to Turbo from 1988. I have Ram It Down. So Ram It Down is Priest trying to correct what happened on Turbo. So I think Turbo, while it went platinum, I think the sales were down from previous albums. So I think they were trying to correct things, realizing that, okay, fans didn't really, we may have gained some new fans, but we really lost some of the old fans. So here they're trying to get back to being heavy. But the problem is, Turbo was supposed to be a double album called Twin Turbo, and when it was just a single album, they kept some of those songs for this album, so you still had a little bit of the Turbo glam hair metal thing going on here, mixed in with stuff that you would kind of hear on the next album. So you've got this album that's got Ram It Down, and Hard as Iron is super heavy, and Blood Red Skies is great. But then you've got like Love Zone, Come and Get It, Love You to Death, I'm a Rocker. So you've got this little bit of Turbo mixed in with the heavier stuff. So this album, and plus they use a drum machine here. So instead of having Dave Holland play the drums, they use a drum machine, and it's 1988. Drum machines in 1988 for rock bands did not sound. You can clearly tell it's a drum machine. Let's put it that way. It's completely fake drums the whole way through, so that's annoying. But I do like these songs for the most part. The song Heavy Metal's all right. I mentioned Hard as Iron. Monsters of Rock to End It's kind of slow but kind of cool. Johnny Be Good, the cover is atrocious. Probably the worst single thing they've ever done. So this album is definitely flawed, but I find myself reaching for this one more than Turbo. I think Turbo had a better production, and I think it was more professionally done, but I don't reach for that one. At least with this one, you've got 3 or 4 or 5 songs on here that I kind of like. So as much as this is a flawed album, I still kind of like it. I don't think it's essential though, but there are certainly, Blood Red Skies is a classic they play to this day. But, so there you go. At number 11 from 88, I've got Ram It Down. Okay, these top 10 are all what I would consider to be good, essential albums. And my 10, 9, 8, and 7 moved. My 7 was a 10, 9, and 8, and vice versa. So these next 4 could be in any order from 10 to 7. So I did my best, and when it came time for the review, this is the order it was in, so that's what I'm going with. But at number 10, from 81, I've got Point of Entry. I think this gets lower marks by the fans. I actually kind of think it is an essential album. It is more simplified, more stripped down, maybe not as metal. It's catchy or melodic, for sure. But Heading Out to the Highway is a radio classic that they play to this day that I still like. I mean, that song has not gotten old to me, so I do like Heading Out to the Highway. And 2 of my favorite tracks they've done, which I guess you'd call them deep cuts, Desert Plains and Solar Angels. Those 2 tracks are excellent. Some of my favorite songs that Judas Priest has ever done. But I think the problem is that's 3 really good tracks, but you've got 10 songs on here, and Don't Go and Hot Rockin' and You Say Yes and All the Way, Troubleshooter, On the Run. Those songs are all pleasant but forgettable and not great. So you've got an album here with 3 really good songs. But beyond that, it's pleasant enough, but it's kind of forgettable. But nothing on here is bad, so it's all pretty good. And again, Desert Plains and Solar Angels are a couple of my favorite tracks they've done. It's just, as a whole, I don't know again, there were a couple of other albums this was competing with, but I don't think this was maybe as important to their career as some other ones. So maybe that's why ultimately this one's falling lieutenant. But I will say I do reach for this, but I only reach for it for those two songs, Desert Flames and Solar Angels. So I do reach for this a bit, but I just hone in on the tracks I want. I really never listen to it as a full album, but still a good album, melodic and maybe a little less metal and more simplified and straightforward, but still good. At number 10 from '81, Point of Entry. Okay, coming in at number 9, this could be somebody's number 1. This is definitely a classic for Priest, but at number 9 I have from 1980, I have British Steel. This was the album before Point of Entry, and this is in this new vein of theirs where things are simplified, straightforward, catchy, ready for radio as well. Rapid Fire is probably my favorite song in the entire album, and that leads it off. Metal Gods, I think, is considered a classic. The chorus kind of bugs me, but the verse riff is really good. Breaking the Law, I don't ever need to hear that song again, nor do I need to hear Living After Midnight again, but I'm not going to penalize this album for having 2 highly successful songs. Because back when I was a kid, I loved Breaking the Law. I just don't need to hear it anymore, but I'm not going to penalize British Steel for having songs that got overplayed by the radio. Grinder's alright. I can't say I like United, not at all, but You Don't Have to Be Old to Be Wise is actually pretty good. The Rage is alright, Steeler's okay. I think this album is a little overrated. It's considered a masterpiece or a classic. It's an overrated classic, but it's a classic. I mean, it came out in 1980, and that was kind of the breakout year for metal. And this was right there. But this is part of this phase of these albums I'm ranking where they started to streamline their sound. I think these 2 albums are definitely a pair. This one's maybe a little more metal than Point of Entry, but this is yet another classic. So there you go, coming in at number 9 from 80, British Steel. Okay, coming in at number 8, I feel like this was the beginning of this, even though this came out in the 70s. Number 8, I've got from 78, Killing Machine, or 79, Hellbent for Leather. Same album, different release date and title. But from 78, I have Killing Machine. This was their, their 5th album? And even though it came out in the 70s, you can tell a change between this and the album that came before it. This one is the beginning of this streamlining and simplifying the sound a little bit, which I thought carried on to British Steel and Point of Entry. And I feel like it started here. So Les Banks is your drummer at this point. And on the album before it, he's all over the place. But on this album, he's very much subdued and left to play it, pretty straightforward beats. Delivering the Goods might be the best track on here. Hellbent for Leather. Those 2 tracks are excellent. Let's see, what else is, the Green Man Alicia, it's a cover. They still play it to this day. It's not bad. I don't think it's good. It's just kind of there. It doesn't really do too much for me, but I don't think it's bad. Running Wild's the other good one. Before the Dawn, for being a ballad, is kind of moodier, so I kind of like that one. But it does have some tracks that bug me, like Evil Fantasies is pretty laughable. Take on the World I don't care for. Evening Star has a strange chorus. The verse riff is good. So it's got some songs on here I don't care for, but it does have some good stuff on here. And again, this is the beginning of them sort of streamlining their sound for at least for these 3 albums. This one, British Steel, and Point of Entry. But I think this, while it has some songs I skip, I think Delivering the Goods, Hellbent for Leather, Running Wild, Before the Dawn, The Green Man Alicia, I think that's what makes this just slightly more of a classic than the 2 that came after. But there you go, at number 8, I have Killing Machine. And again, I think you could have put these in any order. That's just the order I came up with for today. But okay, so in number 7, and this is a bit of a surprise, but sometimes you just got to go with what you like and what you play the most. And so at number 7, for 1974, I'm going with the debut, Rock-A-Rolla, because I like this album and I listen to it quite a bit. And this is the only album that sounds like this. So in 74, there's almost like a progressive sound to this. Kind of a heavy, bluesy, progressive thing. And there's the band early on. 4 of the guys, you got Rob Halford, KK Downing, Glenn Tipton, and Ian Hill. And just the only difference is you've got John Hinch on drums. So they went through a few drummers for a while, but it's pretty much the classic lineup. And I mean, I like everything on here. You know, One for the Road's catchy, Rock-a-Rolla's good. Then they got this suite of like, what is it, Winter Retreat, Deep Freeze, Cheater. That's like 9.5 minute thing of just kind of experimental, total proggy, early to mid 70s style that you'll never hear on another album of theirs. Never Satisfied, they played more recently live. Run of the Mill is my favorite thing on here, and it finishes with this cool 2-minute thing called Caviar and Nuts, which evokes this cool vibe to it too. So I'm not saying this is a perfect album, but I am saying that I like everything on it, and I listen to it a lot, and I just really dig the vibe that you're only going to find here. And that's the original album cover. For years I had seen it with a completely different album cover. But there you go. I got to go with my gut on this one. I'm not saying it's their 7th best record. I'm just saying it's an album I listen to a lot. And that's probably the 70s prog rock guy. Just hears that, it's like, oh, I love that. But so there you go. Number 7, their debut from '74, Rock-a-Rolla. I feel like they're pretty much all classics at this point, but here we go. At number 6, all right, from '84, Defenders of the Faith. What can you say? Freewheel Burning, Jawbreaker, Rock Hard, Ride Free, The Sentinel. I mean, right there, just ripping right out of the gates. Love Bites is a total MTV type song, so I don't care for it, but it's not that it's bad, I just don't care for it. I think they're trying to get a radio hit out of that one. Eat Me Alive's all right. Some Heads Are Gonna Roll is really catchy. Night Comes Down, heavy duty into the title track outro thing. So this album is really good. This is a classic. I think the problem with this and why it's 6th is the drums sound terrible on here. Like the snare sounds bad, and you know, in the beginning of Dave Howland's tenure in the band, they let him do some stuff, and by this point, he's just relegated to keeping a simple beat, hardly any drum fills, and again, the snare sounds terrible, so the drums are... This production is not my favorite production, but you can't deny the song. And it's just loaded with songs. In fact, everything on here is listenable, and I don't know, there are like 9 tracks on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and I mean most if not all of these are good to excellent. So the Sentinel and Freewheel Burning right there. But so there you go. This is definitely a classic, even though the production's a little botched on the drumming end of things. But this is still a classic. So at number 6 from '84, Defenders of the Faith. Okay, number 5. This could be a number 1 for sure. It's the album before Defenders. From '82, Screaming for Vengeance. I mean, Electric Eye, Riding on the Wind, Bloodstone, Screaming for Vengeance, Fever and Devil Shout. I don't want to knock this, again, like I knocked for Breaking the Law. You got another thing coming? I just don't ever need to hear that song again, but I'm not going to penalize this album for having a complete hit song. So there you go. This is an absolute classic. These two are a pair to me. But this one has better production, even though it came out before it. So, and arguably their best album cover. But this album is just ripping. I mean, Electric Eye is probably my favorite track. But it just starts out so strong, and it's got good stuff on the other side. And there you go. I got to speed it up a little bit, but there you go. At number 5, Screaming for Vengeance. It could be a number 1. Could be a number 1. And that's kind of how I feel with these top 5. Like this one, coming in at number 4, their 4th album from '78, Stained Class. Exciter. Stained Class, the song Invader, Saints in Hell, Beyond the Realms of Death, Hero's End. I mean, everything on here is just incredibly excellent. This is Les Binks' first performance with the band. His drumming is incredible. They have some great drumming performances over their career. And here Les Binks is just on fire. Better by You, Better Than Me is a cover. It's probably my least favorite track on the album, but it's a cover. So, I mean, it's not them doing an original there, but yeah, Exciter's ripping. You can kind of hear, if you ever listen to the first Slayer album, Show No Mercy, I feel like it's kind of like Stained Class, or one of those albums from early Priest. But this album's just great great production, incredible drumming. In a way, maybe they peaked right here, but who knows? But yeah, Stained Class, absolutely classic album. The first album with the classic logo that they've had pretty much since then. But there you go. At number 4, possibly a number 1, Stained Class from '78. Okay, coming in at number 3, their third album from '77. Incredible album cover. I love that logo that they had. Sin After Sin. Simon Wright on drums for one album. He was a guest drummer. Incredible drumming on this. 77. I just love the 70s. Sinner. They do a cover of Diamonds and Rust, which they play to this day. It's all right. Starbreaker's great. Last Rose of Summer is kind of a song that you'll never hear them do again, but it was just a cool, pleasant surprise that they put on here. Let Us Pray, Call for the Priest. It definitely finishes strong on that one. Raw deal. Here Come the Tears, kind of more melodic and it's dirgy, ballady, but it's good. It's a good kind of ballad. Dissident Aggressor. I didn't even know who Judas Priest were or what this song was. I just knew that Slayer covered it on South of Heaven, and I dug it. And it just sounds crazy on here, especially considering it's 1977. So this is just another classic album. It could be at number 1. Great drumming again. Everything on here is awesome, or at least pretty good. I just love this era of the band right in here. So this was their third album, the one with Simon Wright. So there you go. At number 3, their third album from '77, Sin After Sin. Okay, here comes the surprise pick. It's not really a surprise. It just kind of disrupts the flow we had going here. But at number 2, and again, I got to go with what I like and what I listen to. From 1990, their 12th album, Painkiller. Their first one with Scott Travis on drums, and you can hear him right out of the gate on the title track. He's been with the band ever since. He's an awesome drummer. Painkiller, Hell Patrol, All Guns Blazing, Weather Rebel, Nightcrawler, Between the Hammer and the Anvil, A Touch of Evil. I mean, to me, this is just loaded with good stuff. I remember when this came out, the only thing I had was a live album that they put out, I guess it was in '87. And so I was like, it's okay, it's not great, but it's all right. And then I heard this, I'm like, whoa, this is way heavier. This was like what I was pleasantly surprised to see the Painkiller video on TV. And was like, that's more like it. This is what you want Priest to be more like. So this is Priest completely, by this point, correcting what happened on Turbo. I think they tried to unram it down, and they got partially there, but a song like Hard as Iron was kind of telling you what might be to follow. And this is probably their heaviest album. Sonically, it's probably their heaviest album. But what can I say? I listen to this one a ton. So you could say, well, Sin After Sin and Stained Class are more classic, even British Steel or Screaming for Vengeance. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying I listen to this one a ton. I listen to that first one a lot too. But this just came out at a time in my life where I was like 13 or 14. It was like, whoa, awesome. So I mean, there you go. Number 2, Painkiller for '90. And there can only be one. So number 1, I've got their second album from '76. I've got Sad Wings of Destiny on vinyl as well. What can I say? '76. I love the '70s. This album comes out of nowhere. The first side, Victim of Changes, into The Ripper, and into Dreamer, Deceiver, Deceiver. Perfect side 1. Perfect. And then you flip it over, you've got, Tyrant, Genocide, Island of Domination. Just incredibly awesome. Awesome album. I love that artwork. I love that logo. This came out in early '76. So up to this point, in my opinion, the only real metal bands that were moving metal forward was Sabbath with their first 6 albums. So they had put out Sabotage. Then this comes out in early '76. And this moves the metal world forward big time. I mean, Victim of Changes and Ripper and all those other songs, this is the first time since anything Sabbath did that you're feeling like metal progressing. And this probably jump-started the new wave of British heavy metal, I think. Them and maybe like an early Motorhead album or something. But and when you listen to Kill 'Em All, or something Dave Mustaine wrote with Metallica in the early days, it just sounds like a sped-up version of like Victim of Changes or stuff on here sometimes. You just, like you can see Slayer was influenced by Priest. You can hear that on Kill 'Em All, you can hear this album cutting through on some of the tracks on Kill 'Em All as well. So love this album. Number 1, Sad Wings of Destiny. So real quick to recap, at number 12 I've got Turbo. Number 11, Ram It Down. Number 10, Point of Entry. Number 9, British Steel. Number 8, Killing Machine, aka Hellbent for Leather. At number 7, Rockarola. At number 6, Defenders of the Faith. At number 5, Screaming for Vengeance. At number 4, Stained Class. At number 3, Sin After Sin. At number 2, Painkiller. And at number 1, Sad Wings of Destiny. A few other things. If you're really ranking the albums, you might say that Unleashed in the East from '79 is the best thing they ever did, especially if you can only pick one Priest album. They cover a lot from Killing Machine, Sad Wings of Destiny, and Sin After Sin, and one song from Stained Class. So, I mean, you can't handpick an era, for, in my opinion, any better. I mean, you've got, what, Genocide and Tyrant on here. Talk about some deep cuts from Sad Wings. That's awesome. Exciter, Running Wild, Sinner, The Ripper, Green Manalishi, Diamonds and Rust, Victim of Changes, Genocide, Tyrant, Starbreaker, Hellbent for Leather, Delivering the Goods. I mean, loaded. This is the first thing I had from them for a while until Painkiller came out. And Priest Live, it just covers everything between British Steel and Turbo, so there's a lot of Turbo stuff on here. And I remember as a kid not being blown away by this, but like in, the Sentinel, Breaking the Law, Heading Out to the Highway, Electric Eye, stuff like Freewheel Burning. So I like some of the stuff on here. And then this came out more recently. This is a live album, Touch of Evil, which came out once they reformed with Halford anyway, and did Angel of Retribution in 2005, and then this was a tour off that. This album, this is where I'm not sure how to rank them. I don't really know where I'd rank this one, but I do like the song Judas Rising and Revolution. The song Loch Ness is a little too long for its own good, but that's on here too. Nostradamus, people love to hate this concept double album. I don't hate it, but I just kind of get bored with it. It's not very memorable, but it's pleasant enough. I mean, I like the song, Prophecy and Death. Those are okay songs. I think this is cool. I like it more than the masses. Redeemer of Souls, so KK Downing's out at this point. You got Richie Faulkner replacing him, awesome guitar player. I think this album would be even better if Glenn Tipton hadn't produced it. It sounds, the production kind of bugs me. It could have been better, but this sounds like a good album underneath that. And I do like this album, Redeemer of Souls, 2014. The one album that would definitely be a top 10 album is their most recent one, Firepower. I think this came out 2018. Talk about a return to form. This album is excellent. Evil Never Dies, Never the Hero's Necromancer, Children of the Sun, Rising from Ruins. Awesome album. I don't know where this would be ultimately, maybe like number 6 or something like that. It'd probably be right in between like Screaming for Vengeance and Defenders of the Faith for me. But this is definitely a top 10 album. But let me see. And I didn't mention the Ripper Owens era. I don't own those two because every time I go to purchase them, they cost a lot of money, and from what I've heard, they're not essential. I think Demolition was the second one they did, and that is the worst thing. If I had to totally rank all 18 albums, Demolition would be dead last. It sounds corny, like they're trying for some style that's not Judas Priest. Then it would be Turbo. Then it would probably be Jugulator, which was the first one with Ripper Owens. Not because it's bad. It's just, it doesn't sound like Judas Priest. They're down-tuned. They've got a different vocalist. They're not playing anything that sounds remotely close to Judas Priest. Like they're trying to do something. Darker new metal or something. And so it's got Bloodstain and a couple of things. I'm not saying it's terrible, but it's certainly not essential, and it's hard to rank. So I would just put it ahead of Turbo, but nothing more. So it'd probably be 16. And then, I guess you'd put Nostradamus at 15 just because it's not very memorable. It's not terrible. Then maybe Angel of Retribution at, 14 or whatever number we're on at that point. And then at that point, I'd probably put Ram It Down at 13, Redeemer of Souls at 12, and then bump some albums back and maybe put this at like number 7, Firepower. One other thing. Epitaph Blu-ray came out during the Nostradamus tour, so sometime between that and Redeemer of Souls. So Richie Faulkner's on here. they play one song from every album, starting with Rockarola and going all the way through Nostradamus. So you've got at least one thing from all those albums, and some of the albums are represented with more than one track for sure. Like British Steel. I mean, you come out of the gate with Rapid Fire into Metal Gods, Breaking the Law, and Living After Midnight. So that's pretty well represented. I think Painkiller's pretty well represented on here too. But you got Blood Red Skies, a deep cut from Ram It Down. The Sentinel, Electric Eye, all the good stuff's on here. All done for love. Victim of Changes, Never Satisfied from the first album. Let's see, what was another? Heading Out to the Highway. Beyond the Realms of Death, they played from Stained Glass. So this is awesome. You got Richie Faulkner in the band. And then for a long time, I really only had Painkiller and The Priest Live. Didn't know where else to start, so when this came out like 15 years ago, I got this. I don't need anything on here anymore, but it helped me kind of figure out where to look to. And I remember hearing Victim of Changes and Sinner and goes, wow, I gotta get Sad Wings of Destiny and I gotta get that 70s stuff. But there you go. So that is ranking the albums of Judas Priest. Thank you for watching, and hopefully when you watch this there will be at least some music, even if it's only music from the first two albums from Dull Records in the background. But this is my second take on this episode because I just couldn't play any of the music. I had like Electric Eye and Desert Plains, Painkiller, and all that stuff playing in the background, but all for naught. But hopefully this time you guys will be able to watch this one. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.